Welcome back to Unchained TV's continuing live coverage of the Sonoma rescue trial, trying to establish from the defense perspective the right to rescue animals trapped in massive animal factories. This is the man who is the defendant in this case, Wayne Hsiung. He is an attorney and former constitutional law professor. Even though he has been gagged from speaking to the media, he is obviously speaking in court as an attorney representing himself, actually taking the stand today and yesterday in his own defense. We've got team coverage with a team of experts and activists. But first, let's go straight out to Carla Cabral, who is at the courthouse. She is our reporter on the scene, a member of DXC. She's been in the courtroom. What exactly is happening, Carla?
Well, it really feels like the trial is starting in earnest now, with Wayne taking the stand yesterday in his defense. Today, it has been the rest of Wayne's testimony and now cross-examination by the Deputy District Attorney, Robert Wayner.
So this is extraordinary to me. When you are representing yourself, you are the attorney, but then you're also sitting in the witness box and asking yourself questions. How does that work, Carla? Because it's hard to picture.
Yeah, prior, the judge actually had spoken with Wayne about the several different ways that it could happen. And what they landed on was really a conversational style. So Wayne pretty much spent over 2 hours just talking about his childhood, his background, what led him into becoming an animal rights activist in the first place. And then he rolled right into the farms where the actions took place, what occurred there, what he believed in going there was happening, and what transpired.
Wow. So let me say this. Carla Cabral is live at the courthouse. She has to be very careful because we can't allow any jurors to hear anything she's saying. So if she moves quickly, you know why. The defense case is underway. We've been talking over and over again about how the judge ruled that there's no video of animal suffering, no photos of animal suffering, and of course, there's frustration because that's why the activists went into these farms and took out approximately 70 to 80 ducks and chickens. But then all of a sudden today, and we have no cameras in the courtroom, so we don't know what's happening. We have to rely on people who've been in court. But suddenly we got word that this piece of video was allowed to be presented by the defense. A very short piece of video that reportedly Wayne Hsiung, or it was videotaped 11 days before one of the actions happened. So I would like to go back to Carla before we go to our panel. What is this describing and why was this allowed? Certainly it's something that animal activists are happy about, that the jury gets to see some of the conditions inside. But why this particular clip, which lasts 25 seconds, and why, when the judge had said no animals would be shown?
Yeah, actually, the prosecution in their witness had opened the door to certain conditions that they said were happening at the farm. And so Wayne asked the judge to be able to be played a bunch of different clips so that he could rebut that testimony. And after reviewing everything, the judge only allowed that one clip to be played. I could only speculate as to why it happened to be that particular clip. Perhaps it's because it's actually one of the more benign clips that was taken of the conditions of the chickens on that farm. But we're glad it made it in, for sure.
Well, I want to go to our incredible panel. Nathan Semmel, you're an incredible defense attorney and former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney. What is your analysis of this sudden turn of events?
Well, I'm glad the jury actually has something that they can look at that brings real life and sadly death to this case, and that it's not just testimony. Video is very powerful. I suggest that more video should be allowed. This jury should be able to get the whole picture of what's happening. And I think Carla probably hit the nail right on the head, that this is one of the more benign videos that those of us who are not members of the jury have been able to look at. It's horrific. I imagine there will be testimony that will explain exactly what this poor bird was suffering with at that moment, but nothing really can do justice like video can. And it wouldn't surprise me if the door is opened again and further evidence comes in. I know we're on the defense case right now, but sometimes suggestions by prosecutors could be made that open the door, or rebuttal evidence comes in that further opens the door. So there may be more video, but I'm pleased that at least the jury will see this.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I've had an opportunity to look at some of the videos that have been sent of their investigations prior to these actions, and in several farms, it's pretty gruesome. I wonder how one clip might actually sanitize what is being shown, what the jury perceives as what is happening inside these facilities. Donny Moss.
Yeah, when I saw that clip, my first reaction was that some jurors might look at it and say, man, that doesn't seem so bad. And, you know, having been inside of chicken farms myself in California, I can say that the conditions are so much worse and the birds are in such worse shape than what this video depicts. So, you know, it's bittersweet that this footage is being allowed to be shown. Perhaps even though more helpful, Jane, is that, you know, there throughout the trial, throughout Wayne's defense of himself, I mean, there were so many objections, and so I wonder if the jury's asking itself, well, what are they hiding here? Why are they not allowing him to speak and to show us things? So that could be just as powerful as the video that's not being shown.
Now, Wayne Hsiung has done daily videos summarizing his perspective on what's happening in court. Remember, we love to just show you what's actually happening in court, but the judge has banned video and has banned still cameras. So let's listen to Wayne talking about one of the witnesses, key witnesses for the prosecution, one of the owners of these animal factories.
Yesterday on the stand, the farmer claims he's a small farmer. He has 200,000 birds in a single building. He claims that the animals are living in a stress-free environment, while also conceding that some of the animals are actually cannibalizing each other. Does that sound stress-free to you? And then the last thing, which I thought was most disturbing, our workers don't wring the animals' necks, they're gassed to death. And we deserve a gold star for this. It felt like some sort of bizarre world where left is right, up is down. Didn't make any sense to me. He can say all these things. He can make it seem like getting gassed to death is like going to Disney World, and we're not allowed to show the footage of what actually happened.
So I have to go to Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network. Again, nobody knows what being gassed to death is like until you see it. And to wit, there was an infamous now undercover investigation that showed how pigs are gassed to death. And it's so horrific, you honestly can't even watch 5 seconds. I realize that's a separate case. This is not pigs, but nobody can say getting gassed to death is like, as Wayne said, going to Disney World. Wouldn't it be appropriate to show that process?
Absolutely. I feel that the jury deserves to see everything, not some, tiny clip of one chicken, that has like a minor ailment. We know the truth. We know what happens in these farms. I haven't been to these farms. I've seen footage. I've seen these chickens come on the slaughterhouse trucks, and it is just absolutely horrific, the conditions that they come in. So I can only imagine how they look on the farms. But I agree full-heartedly that the jury should be able to see everything. If they're saying that that's humane, they should be able to make that judgment for themselves, because seeing those pigs get gassed to death, it's not humane. They scream, they struggle, they gasp for air as it's being ripped from their lungs.
I got to go back to Carla. What were you in the courtroom when this was played? Did you happen to see how the jury took it in?
Yes, I was in the courtroom when it was played, and the jury is paying attention. There were a few jurors who turned their head a little bit because they didn't want to look at it. Several had concerned looks on their faces, so it was getting through to them.
I just wonder, Lindsey Baker, you are a Californian, very close to perhaps being a juror in the sense that you are a California resident, California homeowner, a California voter. If you just saw one clip of one chicken when there's been testimony that, and I want to show this specifically, one of these facilities produces up to 500,000 eggs per day using about 500,000 birds. If you've already heard that testimony, okay, that's what the size of these facilities, and then you see one chicken, what is your reaction as a juror, do you think?
Well, I would be relieved. I would feel like, oh, thank goodness they showed me only a little bit, and I would be horrified. I have seen footage from doing a show with someone, I can't remember when, of a chicken being gassed to death, the whole thing through the end where the nervous system breaks down. It is horrendous. And what they're showing there, from an untrained eye such as mine, what I noticed, the chicken looked a little bit in distress, but I noticed behind the chicken, there are all these healthy chickens walking around, and there was only just a little bit of dirt there. So I think the way it was cut it down. Yeah, we'll see.
Oh yeah. Okay. This is, again, it's like 25 seconds approximately. Obviously, this chicken is in distress. Yeah, you see the chickens in the background. Good catch, Lindsey. It's sort of subliminal. Okay, this chicken, it looks like there might be something, again, I'm not a veterinarian, but with the eyes, and I just like to get a round robin on from everybody, like, what is the significance of this video, Donny, as you watch it?
Well, I'm glad to hear that Carla said that the jurors looked away in a couple of cases, because, again, to me, this footage is benign relative to the footage that's not being allowed to be seen. So fingers crossed that the jurors are, in fact, moved by this and wondering what else might be going on, and wondering why, in fact, the judge allowed this clip and not other clips.
Okay, and joining us now is Michelle Celestino. You've been looking at the Sonoma County Twitter X feed. What do you know about this video?
Well, they indicated that the bump, or do you see the infected eye? That's a tumor on the chicken's eye. And even if you didn't see that, you could see how much distress the chicken is in. It can barely open its eyes. It's, out of all the videos, they chose this because, like Lindsey was saying, it seems like a cleaner background and so forth. I've seen footage where, like, devastating, horrific. If I were a juror, I saw even a blip of that, I would just be completely disgusted, and it would be instantaneously. I would think, like, the defense is definitely on the right track. Prosecution's hiding everything for sure.
Well, you make a good point. We are people who are doing animal rights journalism, activism. We are inundated with these. In fact, to the point where Dr. Melanie Joy, who's written many books, says that, we're traumatized by this footage and we should stop looking at it whenever possible. So we might be a little desensitized to the impact of it. In other words, it seems like a very mild case to us, but to somebody else, it might seem a lot more serious. Remember, there was just recently a scandal where a woman was at a fast food joint and she was eating a fast food and she saw a nipple on her deli slice and freaked out and threw the food in the air. And it was a news story. Like, where did she think that deli slice came from? The deli slice tree? So, maybe, Carla, we may not be the best judges of how impactful that video might be.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we are desensitized. And that's precisely why we like to have vigils, so that people who otherwise are not inundated with this can actually go and witness what happens to the animals on these factories. So I do think that the jury is new to this. And before I speak, am I allowed to tell you something about a juror?
I don't know. I think maybe we should leave it out at this point. Tread carefully, because as much as we are trying to cover this with our hands tied behind our backs, because there's no cameras in the courtroom, and even the sketch artist, if you haven't heard this, to me, this is, okay, here's Judge Laura Pasaglia, a former prosecutor. So undoubtedly she knows these prosecutors very well. But what's really interesting is that this sketch artist had a sketch of the judge ripped out of her hand by the judge, and then an order was issued saying that this same sketch artist is not permitted to sketch prosecutors, witnesses, the judge, court staff, jurors, bailiffs, and or observers in the gallery. Now, given that Wayne has taken the witness stand in his own defense, that means basically you can't even sketch what is happening inside, what is happening inside this this courtroom. You can certainly describe in general terms, like I've covered many trials where we've certainly described jurors in terms of everything. We don't identify them though. So
absolutely not.
Give your observations.
Yeah, no, I certainly was not going to give any particulars. I did want to say that at least one juror I know has a sympathy towards chickens in a personal way. So I think that, we know that there are people on the jury who have had interactions with chickens, and so they would know what a healthy chicken should look like, as opposed to the horrifying eye ailment and body language that we saw of the chicken in that video. So they have some knowledge that would allow them to distinguish why that video is so bad.
So here we are. The defense is, it's the defense case. The prosecution has rested. Before we move on to what's next, I want to go to, and again, we've decided to leave names out of this. It's there's a lot going on, and we want to make sure we err on the side of just discussing ideas as opposed to, naming individuals. Again, we would love to be in court actually playing the video for you, but that is not possible. Check this out. This was the final witness for the prosecution, and then we're going to talk about this.
I'm right there too. All I'm doing is we're checking the box.
That's body cam footage from deputy of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. He was present at both farm actions and was the last witness to be called by the prosecution yesterday. Deputy stated that 80 people were arrested and specifically identified activists arrested for chaining themselves hard entrance gate. He also testified that he believed Wayne was the leader of the group. During cross-examination, Wayne asked if he had any bias toward the farm owners. He said no, despite saying this.
Obviously, I'm on your guys' side on this, but they're never gonna see it our way.
So we certainly can't independently confirm that was his voice, but the bottom line was that the defense is saying he has a bias. This officer who said he didn't have a bias on the witness stand, in fact, does have a bias. And so he's not entirely objective. Who is? But what was the significance of that testimony, Carla, before we do a round robin on it?
Sorry about that. So the significance is to show the collusion between the law enforcement and the farm itself. And I can say that that witness testified that that was their body camera footage, that was them. So they did testify that it was them. And it shows a connection between law enforcement and animal agriculture in this county.
Absolutely. That is a key issue in this case is that, you know, you've made the point, somebody did during the civil rights movement, Nathan, there were convictions of people because the entire system, the judge, the jurors, the police, and everybody had taken one side against those who were advocating for civil rights. I mean, are we talking about the same kind of situation here?
I mean, they're proving exactly what Wayne is saying, that this is a system. This is, we're not pointing the fingers at necessarily individual bad actors, but that this is a systemic problem. And you just saw that in a 5-second clip. Is, you know, Carla labeled it as a connection. I'd say it looks like a mighty cozy relationship that the police seem to have with the owners of the factory farm. And, you know, it's awfully hard to get a fair trial when there is such a relationship. And I think when a jury sees that they're not being allowed to see evidence, they're seeing a 10, 15, 20-second sanitized clip that really isn't consistent with all of the testimony that's coming out. I mean, this jury is hearing evidence about thousands and tens of thousands of culled animals, you know, sick animals, and they're only getting to see this one little piece. You know, this is the danger of a system that doesn't protect the accused, that doesn't protect activists, and turns a blind eye to the real offenders, to those who are committing atrocities.
And there's other issues. We're going to get to that right now. By the way, you're looking at drone footage of one of these major actions. You can see the number of police. I mean, my gosh, with the crime that's happening and other problems societally, you'd think, oh my gosh, maybe they should be deployed somewhere else. It's really fascinating. The jury is not going to see that, although I'm not going to say never, because the judge had said no video of animals, and now we've already seen one chicken with some others in the background. Carla, I want to ask you, what's going to happen next? Wayne's going to get cross-examined, but there were a whole bunch of defense witnesses that had to be flown in, that were already, prior to trial, cross-examined, some of them by the prosecution. And that was a very unusual thing that raised a lot of eyebrows. Let me play one who is supposedly going to testify, just to get a sense of where are we in this case in terms of how far along are we?
Hi, I'm Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg, and I was just admitted to testify as an expert witness.
But she can only speak about the footage from Sunrise Farms and Reichart that she reviewed to render her veterinary opinions. She cannot speak about the medical record for Libby, a hen rescued from Sunrise and brought to her for care who was so sick she died within hours.
Okay, that would be a very appropriate video, I would think, of that chicken who died in Dr. Rosenberg's arms, to show that has been deemed apparently irrelevant. But where are these witnesses? Have they testified? When are they going to testify, Carla?
Yeah, so we expect that the cross-examination will finish today, and we could get to one or even two witnesses. We're expecting Paul Darwin Picklesheimer to testify today, perhaps Elmira Tanner. We don't know how much time there will be.
Yeah, and people are kind of, oh, by the way, Carla rocks, according to Emma Echo. Yes. So let me ask you one more question, Carla. What was Wayne's demeanor on the witness stand? Because we know, you know, they always say if you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client. But repeatedly, Wayne has represented himself in similar cases and come out with acquittals. He is a very, very brilliant attorney, in my opinion, and certainly the record shows. And I'm going to show a closing argument from a previous case where he ended up being acquitted, along with Paul Picklesheimer, of taking animals out of a giant, massive pig factory in Utah.
And I wish I could tell you the full story of what happened. We were on very direct orders to talk only about the night of March 7th, 2017, only about two pickets. But it's an interesting thing hearing someone as compelling as Juan, and he's a very compelling speaker, talk about what's in your heart in a way that you know is not true, and it's not. And honestly, the best way to explain it is the way Rick explained it, that there's a big difference between stealing an animal and trying to help someone who needs some help.
Is that pretty much the demeanor that Wayne has shown in court and on the witness stand?
Of course, Wayne is Wayne. So Wayne comes through as very honest because he strives to be as transparent as possible in every aspect of what he does. So he spoke from his heart during his testimony, and on cross-examination, he has continued to try to do his very best to make sure that he is answering everything as completely and openly as possible. But the interesting thing is Deputy District Attorney Robert Wayner from the very start was a bit combative and actually asked Wayne, can you commit to me if I ask you a yes or no question that you will keep your answer to yes or no? It was very condescending in my humble opinion, and another person is shaking their head here who was in the courtroom, that it was very condescending. And Wayne said, well, I mean, life is not black and white. You cannot always simply answer yes or no if that will not answer the question truthfully. So it was very interesting, but Wayne has been very patient. For some reason, the court stenographer has been making audible sounds, and they've had to stop Wayne in the middle of what he said multiple times so that she can take correct notes of what's being said. So it's definitely a little bit tense in the courtroom, but Wayne has been trying his level best to keep things calm and truthful. And I think that we've seen the jury shaking their head as well.
Wait a second. I mean, Wayne's not a fast talker. I'm a fast talker. I'm a loud talker. But you're saying to me that that doesn't make any sense. What is your thought on that, Donny Moss?
Is the stenographer having some sort of odd emotional reaction? I can't possibly understand, because I think we all know that Wayne is a slow and measured speaker, and he's a very clear speaker. Although, you know, we're not there, so we can't see what's happening with our own eyes. I can't make heads or tails about why the stenographer would have to pause in order to catch up.
Well, what you're saying, Carla, you're saying it seems like she's having emotional reactions to the testimony?
Yeah, well, not to the testimony, but they are constantly, by they, I mean the judge and the stenographer are constantly stopping Wayne in the middle of what he's saying, which is very disruptive to his thought process, but they are constantly stopping him. The judge is saying over and over, Mr. Hsiung, or actually she says Mr. Shun. She has not pronounced his name correctly, not even once, but she keeps telling him, you're speaking too quickly, you're too fast, you're going to have to slow down. And the noises that are being made by the stenographer are in that respect also. She has gasped, and she keeps making faces and looking at the judge, and it's very disruptive in my opinion.
Well, no wonder she doesn't want a sketch artist in there. Now it's coming together. Lindsey, what's your take on that?
I don't know. I was just picturing that scenario, and just off the top of my head, it seems like it's, you know, a situation where, oh, we have, you know, I'm just related to the corporate world. Oh, we have this very difficult situation we have to deal with. And the court stenographer possibly has been given a lot of back and forth with the judge about this, and it sounds like they're somehow have discussed it before, or by that gesture to me makes me feel like there's a connection where they've discussed this, not necessarily in a non-biased way. That's just like right off the top of my head.
You are absolutely right. It kind of reminds me in the corporate world where you're in a meeting and somebody you don't like is talking, and you're kind of rolling your eyes and you know, I mean, you're nodding your head, Michelle. What are your thoughts?
I object. I think it's all strategy. I really do. I think they're calculated, the judge, the prosecution, the whole court system there up in Sonoma. There's just no way the judge is a former DA. There's no way that she's not doing that for effect. She knows subconsciously the jury is going to be feeding into that, and definitely trying to disrupt Wayne's train of thought. Yeah, because he is so balanced, he is so brilliant, he is so measured in his speaking. Like, it really, I'm listening to this and I can't be patient. It really upsets me that all this bias is happening.
Well, having covered many criminal trials myself, I will say always respect the jury, never underestimate the jury. They are hyper vigilant, taking everything in, and they're a lot smarter than sometimes people give them credit for. I will use as Exhibit A the closing statement that failed in the case of Wayne Hsiung and Paul Picklesheimer being accused of taking out some pigs from a factory farm. This was the closing statement that jurors in a post-trial interview said offended them.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Hsiung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine you're at DQ, you see a dripping ice cream cone up there that the clerk just put on the counter. Oh dear, that cone is dripping off the side. I better take it so that it doesn't make a mess on the floor.
I mean, that the jurors in post-trial interview, and they acquitted Wayne and Paul, they said that they were offended by that. And Ellen Dent, your take on that?
Well, who wouldn't be? It's completely unprofessional for him to be doing these kind of motions. Like, that's like, I'm crazy or he's crazy, like literally saying that and comparing a living sentient being to an object. I mean, he helped them probably make that connection right there that, what he's saying is wrong. This is incorrect. This is a creature that was suffering, that needed to be rescued. And that's exactly what Wayne did. And I just want to make a comment about the judge and the stenographer from this court, from this court proceeding, is it's completely unprofessional for them to be making noises and rolling their eyes. They're not at lunch together, so they need to get out of that mode and show respect for Wayne and for the defense team.
I think you make a really good point, Ellen. Now, Donny Moss, the prosecution has been quoted as saying they want to cut the head off the snake, presumably of either the animal rights movement entirely or the open rescue movement. And Wayne Hsiung is certainly the leader of the movement to establish a right to rescue animals who are suffering. And this, let's say, is not connected. This is certainly not connected. The images I'm going to show you, but basically industrialized animal agriculture is, I think we can make a very good argument to say it's industrialized torture of animals because there's no nice way to kill 80 billion animals, which is what we're raising for food every year on this planet. So supposedly the prosecution in this case had studied the other cases where Wayne was acquitted, where Alexandra Paul, the former Baywatch actress who was accused of taking some chickens, and by the way, the defense videotapes all their crimes, so their alleged crimes. So there was videotape of her taking the chickens. But supposedly they had studied those cases, they had learned from them, and they weren't going to make the same mistakes again. What do you think? Do you think they've learned from the previous cases? Just unmute. Thanks.
When we learned that the judge was going to allow a bit of footage inside, the footage that you've shown, a part of me wondered if that was in response to the negative impact not showing footage had in those previous trials. So maybe that's why they're allowing this footage to be shown. I don't know. Wayne did envision the right to rescue movement, I think, as far back as 15 years ago. And now we're seeing the impact all these years later. And so I guess it really comes as no surprise that the industry is trying to cut off the snake's head. Ironically, Wayne is no longer the head of the organization that's leading the movement, the right to rescue movement. So there are going to be other snakes who they're going to have to go after. And quite frankly, this is a movement that's growing in strength and growing in numbers. And so it's a little bit, maybe it's a little like, whack-a-mole. If they somehow convict Wayne of these charges, other rescuers are going to pop up all over the place who want to shine a spotlight on the cruelty and take some of the victims out and show the world what's happening inside, despite the risk to their own safety and freedom and financial security.
Well, I think that you make an excellent point that I think the big fear from the big they, the powers that be, is that, well, if they get acquitted a third time, then people are just going to start going into factory farms and taking out these suffering animals. You were at one of the open rescue actions at the heart of this case, Donny, and I want to play your video because you really brought the entire case home. And I'm looking for that video right this second. It was at the duck farm, right? I think.
We entered the facility and we immediately came to the front and chained ourselves to the front gate. Another team chained themselves to the slaughter line, which was actually turned on while one of the activists was chained onto the line. They didn't seem to care that he almost got killed from that.
This little baby was found in one of the barns already dead.
The animal cruelty that is going on here is horrific. These animals are hatched on site, and then this building behind me is the slaughterhouse. And inside of this facility, there's massive amounts of barns, and they're mesh floors. And so their webbed feet press down into the mesh and cuts into their feet. These animals are meant to live in the water, and they never touch the water their entire lives. Never.
Excellent video. Donny, I have to go back to you. You were there. Can you describe like the threat that this movement poses to the powers that be? I mean, we're not just talking about those two individual owners of, or however many people actually own those two facilities. In fact, our movement says they are being factory farmed too. They are also victims trapped in a system, and there's no animosity toward any of those people and no animosity towards slaughterhouse workers or slaughterhouse operators, that it's a system. But if you think about the system, the big banks and the US government, the USDA run by a dairy industry trade group leader, really the entire structure of our society is a carnist structure. So it really threatens so many aspects of the power structure. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this is a really important trial. Everybody should be there. The New York Times, CNN, ABC, NBC, right this second, I could tell you UnchainedTV is the only a news outlet doing this kind of coverage, or really any kind of coverage right now. So please download and support Unchained TV, our nonprofit streaming network, the world's only vegan streaming network for animals, people, and the climate. Can you address some of the big picture issues here?
Yeah, I mean, the industry definitely sees, and not only the animal industry, but also their allies in the halls of Congress see the animal rights movement as an existential threat. I mean, so much so that there have been laws passed in several states called ag-gag laws, which prevent people from just taking images of what's happening inside. And keep in mind, these institutions, animal factories and slaughterhouses, most of them are down long roads behind high gates, far out of the view of the public. So, the industry and the government are taking dramatic steps to ensure that people don't see what's happening behind closed doors. And so when you have an organization like DXC that's going in and taking this footage and getting that footage covered by the mainstream media, and provoking these prosecutions, which will hopefully generate even more media attention. Yeah, this is a threat to their existence. And as long as cruelty takes place in these animal factories and slaughterhouses, activists are going to speak out, and they're going to find a way to keep doing this until these systems of oppression are shut down.
I like to say, if you want to get on mainstream television as a person who wants to talk about the importance of animal rights for the climate, for habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, human disease, preventable lifestyle diseases, cancer, heart disease, etc., you've got to either get arrested, or you've got to get naked, or you've got to jump on a runway. But now even getting arrested and facing trial doesn't seem to get that much attention, because look at the advertisers. You're looking at Unchained TV on a Samsung TV right behind us. You can download it on any Samsung smart TV. But this is advertising free. We're a nonprofit. If you look at mainstream media, meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical commercials are their bread and butter. Carla, what are you seeing there in terms of coverage? And we know no cameras in the courtroom, no videotape, not even sketches. So how would it'd be hard for a TV news station to cover it unless they would do something like this, which is doable. I mean, obviously, I was a crime reporter who covered a crime for CNN headline news, for court TV, for syndicated TV, for local TV. It can be done. If there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, press could come out here. They could come in the morning. They could interview those of us who have been inside the courtroom. There, like you said, where there's a will, there's a way. They could make it happen. And I just wanted to say, you guys have been hitting on so many points that are going on inside the courtroom without even knowing it. This afternoon, when Robert Wayner was cross-examining, or not this afternoon, this morning, when Robert Wayner was cross-examining Wayne, he was asking loads of questions about DXE, in particular, the roadmap that we have to ending animal exploitation. A lot of us were shaking our heads. We were actually really happy to hear him speak about all of the tenets of direct action everywhere and our roadmap to ending exploitation. And he spoke about Rose's Law and all of the 5 points of Rose's Law to give animals rights under the law and rights not to be exploited. But Bob Wayner was saying it in a way that was trying to trap Wayne into stating that the average consumer is contributing to violence. But true to Wayne, he turned it around to state that no, we are trying to end systems of exploitation, and that your average consumer is also just a victim of these systems. So beautiful work by you guys, and it's exactly what's going on in the courtroom right now.
So let's talk a little bit about courtroom strategy, Nathan Semmel. What can we expect the prosecution to try to do when they cross-examine Wayne Hsiung further? I mean, I don't envy the prosecution's challenge here. Wayne is extraordinarily articulate and intelligent. and should not be underestimated.
Yeah, I mean, every word that he chooses has a purpose. It comes from the heart, but he is a seasoned attorney, and he knows what he's doing. You know, in that clip you played a little while ago, you heard him say, you know, I'd really love to show you more, but I'm not allowed to. You're gonna get an objection from the prosecution, but it's what needed to be said was said. It shows we're the transparent people here. They aren't. They're trying to keep things from you. You know, he tells the truth. He's got nothing to hide, and he becomes a very, very difficult witness for the prosecution to cross-examine, because there's never going to be a gotcha moment. He's never going to be, you know, didn't you, you know, I have you on video once saying this, and now you're saying something else. That's not going to happen. His story is never going to change. You know, where there could be, I suppose, some exposure is that I know the defense is going to rely on mistake of law. And I think, you know, what the prosecution is probably trying to establish is that DXC sets it up so that they can make that argument, so that they can later say, oh, we were just relying on what we thought the law was. But I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to backfire, because Wayne is just so good in explaining things. And more than that, the law that they're relying on is a legitimate law. I mean, it's a criminal statute that they're relying on. So, you know, which is this 597E that allows them to go in and help animals in distress who are being denied food and water. And you go in there, and lo and behold, what do you see? Animals suffering, not getting proper food and water. So everything he says is supported by evidence. And he just also happens to be a terrific, compassionate person, and that comes across.
Let's get into the weeds on this, because this is important. The devil's in the details. Now, back in back many years ago, Californians passed something called Prop 2, which said animals have a right to spread their wings and turn around, and they have certain space requirements. So DXC, in their investigations, went into these animal facilities and argued, and I wasn't there, so I can't with a measuring tape, but argued that the facilities are in violation, they alleged, of Prop 2. Now, since Prop 2 went into effect here in California, there has not been, to my knowledge, a single prosecution. There has not been one single prosecution of a Prop 2 violation. Meanwhile, a lot of people think, oh, well, everything's great. I can eat animals with abandon because they're doing so well now. Tell us the backstory on that. And I want to first play Alexandra Paul, because she was also prosecuted in California. And she basically made the case, the reason I took the chickens is that we couldn't get the authorities to act. We showed them evidence that we believe showed violations of the law inside animal factories. We're talking about different facilities, but inside animal factories, and the authorities refused to act.
Chaos of the high slaughter speeds that workers are pressured to meet. Living birds sometimes get mistaken for dead ones and are thrown in the trash alive. I knew that this cruel fate was waiting for birds on that slaughter truck. I knew the conditions that they were raised in by foster farms left many of them injured, infected, and disabled. DXC had tried reporting these criminal conditions to the authorities, but we were ignored.
Now, we invite foster farms or anybody from the animal agriculture industry on at any time. We would love to dialogue with you. We'll have you right on. But Carla, before we do our round robin, where does that stand? Is Prop 2 going to get in to this discussion? Are jurors going to hear that there's this law, I think it's 597E, that says if animals are deprived of food or water for 12 hours, you can rescue them? Are they going to hear about Prop 2, which says that animals have to have a certain amount of space to turn around, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, it was the prosecution's own witness that testified to Prop 2 and how they had to build new areas that were up to the specs that they understood them to be for Prop 2. So again, we felt the door was opened to discussing Prop 2, and the facilities in question and whether they were up to spec. Unfortunately, again, the judge ruled some evidence inadmissible. Sorry, guys. So the judge ruled evidence inadmissible that would have rebutted what their witness said. So that was very confusing to all of us, why they were able to bring up Prop 2 and talk about conditions, and we were not able to rebut those conditions. So I'm not sure about that.
Well, I mean, again, I need to do a round robin on this. Nathan Semmel is a former Manhattan DA, but we can't always go to him on all these. I mean, common sense. I think Californians, they may not know Prop 2. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was 2015. I actually collected signatures for Prop 2 way back when. Michelle, what do you make of it?
The way I look at this, if I were a juror on this panel, I would be thinking all of this to do, and there's no animal cruelty, and they're going to show me this one clip of the bird. Yeah, we might be a little jaded because we see really horrific video, but I'm going to be feeling that they're definitely hiding something. There's definitely more to this story. And the more the judge keeps ruling inadmissible to Prop 2, I know when Wayne was testifying, and the prosecution was crossing him, there were 4 sidebars. And one of them was an objection to Prop 2, him bringing that up, even though they opened the door on it. So I'm telling you, the jury's smarter. They know that the information is not all there. And I would be questioning and looking suspiciously at the prosecution. And I might even be a little angry that the judge is being so biased.
Well, I will say, being in court, it can get boring, even with the most exciting cases, because there's so much procedure. But when a judge repeatedly interrupts, we know when a prosecutor repeatedly says objection to everything the defense is saying, it raises the eyebrows, Lindsey, of the jurors sitting in the jury box. They take that in a way, it almost telegraphs to the jury, pay attention to what was just said because we're objecting.
Right. It's like when someone doesn't want to tell you something, you make it, it just makes it more and more important to you to find out what they are hiding. So I do believe that it will backfire once again. And I thought another sidebar was really interesting, if I may, and that was the one about the royal we, and that how Wayne really there's no way to prove who exactly Wayne speaks for. And this is, I'm stating this in layman terms, but basically you can't speak for every activist is what I think it said. But if you want proof, judge, just check out how many members there are to DXE. Just check out how many people are opposed to this sort of treatment of animals, and surely you will see that that royal we that Wayne is using definitely applies to enough people that in a democratic society notice would be taken.
You're referring to one of the sidebars where reportedly the judge said, basically, don't go beyond the sidebar. You said that at sidebar it was upsetting for activists generally. When you speak about other activists, you need to say who and if you were present for the things you were discussing. You're testifying to the beliefs of other people and a collective people. Is that 10 people, 10,000 people, 1 million people? The entirety of a movement is not available for cross and to test reliability and credibility. There is some leeway to be granted as to common belief of the group as it relates to conspiracy and whether or not there was a conspiracy. Walk with caution as to the royal we. Lord, Nathan, what is going on here? I'm missing something.
Yeah, I mean, you can't speak for what somebody else is thinking or saying, or what somebody else thinks in their mind or why they do something that they do. So you have to be careful when you're a witness not to say we.
But wait a second. I want to jump in. I want to jump in while you're talking and show this, because Wayne Hsiung is in the white shirt right there to the left near the pole, and somebody's talking to him right now. So all these people, the prosecution itself, it says he is the leader. They have tried to establish that. Now they're saying, oh, he can't speak for all these people who are chaining themselves up by the neck and risking their lives. When it seems like they can't have it both ways, Nathan.
Yeah, it's silly actually, and I think it makes them look silly. The least of which is one of the charges here is conspiracy. So you would think that as a prosecutor, you love the word "we." So I don't really understand what the point of it is. I think they're getting sort of distracted by knowing the law as opposed to being smart tactically. I think they're trying to sort of be the smartest person in the room, and the judge is saying, yeah, you can't, Mr. Hsiung, you can't testify to "we." But strategically, to me, it doesn't make any sense. I think if you're a prosecutor charging conspiracy, you love to have the witness use the word "we."
Really interesting. I mean, you're right. Sometimes courtroom strategy is so intricate. It's like a three-dimensional chess game, and you are trying to win points, but you really want to win the case. You don't want to win just points. Now, there was another clip that was offered that essentially said that one of the witnesses is going to be a famous former prosecutor, Bonnie Clapper. And she, correct me if I'm wrong, Carla, is going to testify, correct?
Yes, it's my understanding that Bonnie is on the list, as well as Hadar Avaram. They're both going to give their testimony. I also wanted to jump in and say that as far as 597E, because you'd asked about that previously, the judge did read the entirety of 597E to the jury so that they would have an understanding, because it's being brought up so many times, so they understand what's being referenced.
And tell us in people terms what 597E says.
597E, it basically says that average citizens have the right to break the law, so to speak, or go onto somebody's property if they are doing so that they can provide food and water to an animal that's been impounded or that is in a pound that is in need of food and water.
Oh, impounded, but not in any case.
Well, that's kind of the crux of this, is the understanding of what it means for an animal to be in a pound. That's where there's so much, everybody is saying that means a shelter, but that doesn't make sense. And Wayne explains this beautifully, that it just doesn't make sense that the law would be about the average person going onto another person's property or somehow getting to an animal who is in need because they know that animal has been unable to get food or water for at least 12 hours if they were in a shelter. That just doesn't make any sense, especially given that this law was put into place a very long time ago, back when there weren't even really a lot of shelters in place. So the argument is that it means an animal that is confined in some way. So if you think about it in those terms, that it's an animal that's being confined, then that goes well beyond the scope of a shelter.
Wow, this is so absolutely fascinating. So many issues raised in this case. We are almost out of time. We're going to go for final thoughts. We will continue our trial coverage. We've got a lot of defense witnesses. And then once the defense wraps up its case, the prosecution gets to do a rebuttal case. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan. And then, of course, you have closing arguments, and then you've got verdict watch. The trial is not happening on Mondays. So it's rejoined after today, after the afternoon, for Tuesday. So I just want to get some final thoughts on where we stand in this case. And I want to bring in Donny Moss first. What do you think? What's the scorecard?
So just a couple of observations I haven't yet made. First off, when that deputy said to the animal factory farmer, I shouldn't use that word, I'm on your side. I mean, he confirmed what we already knew, that this is a good old boys club. The activists who came in from another county, they're not his constituent. They don't care about him. The law enforcement is clearly taking the side of of the animal factories. And likewise, the judge might as well declare openly that she's part of the prosecution team, not independent, because everything I've read about her remarks and her behavior would suggest that she's clearly biased. And who knows, maybe the stenographer is too. And so one thing I've come to the realization in this case that not only does the prosecution, including the judge, not care about the welfare of animals, I don't think that they even care about the laws that are designed to protect animals. They just don't care. They have an agenda here, and it's not justice.
Wow. Well, powerful words. We invite the judge, the prosecutor, the deputy who testified, the owners of these animal facilities, these animal factories on anytime, anybody actually from the animal agriculture industry, Sonoma County, you're invited on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. Lindsey, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I agree with Donny. I agree with what he just said. And I think the main thing is they have underestimated this movement. And they continue to underestimate the jury and everybody else in the case that's going to see that Wayne is innocent and this is wrong. It's wrong for everyone. It's wrong for the planet. It's wrong for our health. It's horrific for the animals. There's no right to this, and it needs to change, and it needs to change now. So this is leading the way to change.
Wow. Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network.
I just want to say that I really appreciate that the jury's going to be able to see this footage. I was looking at the comments. A lot of people, even in the comments, were affected by that footage. So maybe we have been desensitized, and I'm glad they're going to be able to see that because, it just reinforces why Wayne and those other activists were there. They were there not to break the law. They didn't come in at night and put masks on and break into the place like that. They went in there to help save other sentient beings who needed more than food and water, like outlined in 597E. And that's apparent even from that small clip. So I hope that jury is going to see right through everything, right through this judge's behavior, the stenographer, that video of that officer saying that they're on the side of the farmer, because I'd love to see that judge talking to the farmer, hear that conversation, how that goes. But it's obvious that they're trying to stack all of the cards against Wayne. And I hope that the jury can see that there's something very unjust unfolding in front of their eyes.
Well, you raised such an important point, Ellen. I know I said final thoughts, but I do have a question for Carla. So when the deputy took the stand and said he was neutral, and then he acknowledged saying that he was he said in the undercover, the basically the police cam footage, he's talking to a farmer and says, of course I'm with you guys, words to that effect. Was that point made before the jury? Was Wayne able to make that point? I would love to have had that video played in court. I don't see why it shouldn't have been.
The video, the body cam video, is that what you're? That was played. That was played in court. That was played for that witness, and the witness kind of lost their cool a little bit. You could see they didn't quite know what to say. They took a moment to gather themselves, and then they said, "Oh, no, that was just, I was just establishing rapport." Whenever you go to a scene, you have to establish rapport with the people who are there. So that was his excuse for saying those words.
I wonder if they established rapport when they went in, right? Like we're dealing with a massive, whatever, I don't know, hostage taking, terrorist. Look, this I think should be shown to the jury. Is there any chance, Carla, that this would be shown? Because it shows an overreaction to removal of 70 birds over the course of several farms, okay? 2 farms in particular. 70 birds. What's the total value in the marketplace of those 70 birds? Meanwhile, We know that big box stores are closing down all over California because people are just walking out with stuff worth thousands of dollars. And there's no police response like this. So honestly, I have to say, I would be very annoyed as a juror, because as a juror, I'm also a taxpayer. And, I'm a California taxpayer. Do I want to see my tax dollars going to this? I know it's a local municipality, but still there's grants and things of that nature. So, not to get too carried away, but my final thought is that as a juror who's a taxpayer, I'm like, how much money are they spending prosecuting these people, prosecuting this guy for organizing the rescue of 70 ducks and chickens? I mean, that would be my reaction. Like, why are we here? Even if I was sympathetic to the prosecution, I'd be like, in other words, even if I was not an animal lover per se, I'd be like, the world's falling apart. There's crises all over the world. People are dying. There's crime. There's murders of human beings. Why are we here? That would be something that I would be thinking as a juror. Nathan, I just have to go back to you on that. Do you think that is something that, with your knowledge of juries, that they would be thinking?
Yeah, I think so. And it's one of the first questions I would love to be able to ask some of these juries afterwards, whether they were angry the fact that they wasted a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of their lives serving on a jury for a case like this. And I will bet you there are many who cannot believe that the prosecution uses its discretion to prosecute people who do nothing more than try to save animals. And, in every case, they hear about millions of animals or thousands upon thousands of animals at these particular, industrial warehouses. But in each case, the theft is usually for a handful of birds, or, you're talking about a couple of $1,000s for multi-million-dollar corporations. I mean, these jurors have to think, what are we doing here? Why are you bothering these people? I mean, what real loss are you even really suffering? And I think you can't help but be left with the feeling that it's just all collusion. They're all just acting together in each other's best interest. I mean, you said earlier that you don't think Prop 2 has ever been enforced. There's never been an arrest. Of course not, because we got that luxury of that body cam footage, which is, we're with you. So of course those same officers aren't going to go making an arrest for a violation of birds not being able to spread their wings. When they say we're with you, they're saying, we think you should be able to do this. We think you should be able to make a living however you make a living, because this is how people eat. And there's just this normalization that makes this, this open rescue so important. This movement so important to show that it's not normal. And this is not somebody that you should be with, that this is not a system that you should be okay with, and that you should be actually, adhering to your oath, which is go after the bad actors, not choose a side. But when you know that there's a violation of Prop 2, which citizens of California want, or there's a violation of animal cruelty, and protesters have the documented evidence, and you choose not to follow where that leads, it's not serving the people of California or whatever state the way they should be, and it's certainly not serving these victims that are just suffering terribly.
Your final thought, Michelle Celestino.
I agree with everyone on the panel, and definitely as a juror, I would be thinking this is really ridiculous that we're going round and round, and animal cruelty is definitely happening. And I think it's going to shine a bigger light on the fact that Wayne's constitutional rights, I believe, are not being adhered to, because what is happening? This is collusion. This is bias by the prosecutor and the judge and the whole court. I just feel the truth will prevail, and then Wayne will take this case, and it's going to be another mark of like success in the animal rights movement.
Yeah, and you know, three's the charm. I don't want to jinx anything. And by the way, the prosecution has indicated they watch our live video. So hello, Assistant DA and DA. Which I think is significant that they're watching our live videos. As we go to a final thought for Donny, did you do your final thought? Yes. I always get caught up at this part. Carla, I think you're getting the final thought, but take it away.
Well, I can, my final thought is that there is so much more to this, and I'm excited to see all of the witnesses testify, to find out how much the jury will and will not be able to get to see about what goes on. I can say that there has been some footage played showing the officers who have responded. In fact, the prosecution was actually trying to make the opposite point, that look at all of the taxpayer money that had to go into all of these different officers coming for what these activists did. So they were trying to make the opposite point, that it was our fault that taxpayer money got wasted. So we'll see how the jury takes that, whether they think that it was actually our fault, or is it the fault of society and the system having these places that we need to go there in order to show what happens. And in fact, the same body cam footage that was shown, I saw more of that body cam footage, and that witness actually had a conference with other officers where they stated, look, we can't go in there and do an investigation because otherwise we'll have to do that for all the places. And the jury didn't get to hear that, but that goes to the idea that they know that all of these places are horrible, and that if we investigate one of them, they would have to go and investigate all of them. So I'm very excited for what's going to come. And I just saw Hadar Abraham show up, so I think we're going to be getting testimony from her today.
Wow, super exciting. You've raised such an important point. If they'd start investigating one farm, they would have to start investigating all of them. It's a house of cards. And, you know, the law of unintended consequences, they're trying to basically turn back the clock or stop the clock of history from moving forward. And we know how that goes. It may work for a little while, but it never works in the long run. So I want to thank everybody for being part of this extraordinary coverage. We're going to continue to come back. We're going to come back for key testimony. We're going to come back for closing arguments and the verdict. Please keep it here. My final thought is, if you like our coverage, please download Unchained TV. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. You can download Unchained TV on your phone through the App Store. If you have a Samsung Smart TV, you can download Unchained TV through the Smart Hub and have it right up there with Netflix and Amazon Prime. And if you have any TV, if you have an Amazon Fire Stick, a Roku device, or an Apple TV device, you can use those devices to download Unchained TV. And finally, you can just go to UnchainedTV.com and you can start watching our videos. We are just about getting the truth out. We are a nonprofit. Thank you for joining us for this coverage. See you next time at the courthouse.